Hello everybody, and welcome to DKC3. Tonight's category is all DK coins. It's a bit of an offshoot compared to the normal categories run for this game. In order to play through it, we actually have to input a cheat code called, we enter water, and what it does is it lets us enter a waterfall at the beginning of the world to retrieve 85 bonus coins that, under normal circumstances, we would have to pick up typically through the bonuses in the game. Here, we could just speed through that. Makes things a lot easier for the run. And hang on. Trying to set up took a little too long. So let's put the code back in. Alright. Alright, trying the upped mic. If the people in the back can let me know if that was good enough. Alright, so, here we go. The run begins in 3, 2, 1, go. So this category is a bit different from the typical any percent category in that we're actually going to be seeing a world that we normally don't see. Skipping wrinkly. So the first thing we have to do is we actually have to go into this waterfall, and we have to perform a Simon Says puzzle in order to get these coins. So let's see. I had to make sure to get that, because if you fail it the first time around, you actually cannot re-enter the waterfall, and you have to reset. So, but now that we've got the coins, now we just go to Funky's Rentals, we could pick up our first boat, and we could get the things, we could get our run started. If anyone has seen this game before, specifically the any percent routes, then we're going to be following it pretty closely in that we're using the warp barrels. But to start with, we're actually going to be collecting the DK coin here. So for this category, there is an enemy called Coin, which you see right here. The goal is we have to knock him out with these wooden barrels, steel barrels rather, and collect the DK coin. Now in this level, once we collect him, all we have to do is just go straight to the warp and we're done. However, now here's where the first major change happens in routing. Doorstop dash, typically we usually take the warp pretty close to the start. However, because of where the coin is located, we actually can't do that. We can't actually do that. We actually have to play through the entire level in order to reach coin. So each level in the game has its own little gimmick. The first level, there wasn't really much of a gimmick, it was just a way to get you to show movement and whatnot. Here, the gimmick is we have these doors that have pull levers. In order to enter the door, we have to pull the lever, and we have to make it through the door before it closes on us completely. Like so. And then we have things like shooting barrels and jumping across certain enemies to reach them. So, if there's one thing this game is good for, it's bringing up a bunch of gimmicks. Some of them aren't exactly liked by some players, but some are. Oops, overshot the barrel. So see, we have to do a double barrel shot here in order to collect this one. So, you're probably wondering, where's Coin? We've gone through the entire level here. Well, Coin is right here at the back. Unfortunately, we can't reach him normally through the warp, so we actually have to go through the level entirely in order to get through it. Collect the bananas, and... alright. Okay, so moving on to Tidal Trouble. This level is good because it has the DK barrel right, it has the DK coin right at the beginning, so we don't have to do anything special for this. And once we get straight to it, we can just take the warp and get out of here. The gimmick here is that the water actually has a current that pushes you back, but thankfully we're not in the water long enough for it to actually affect us. So now we're on to Skitter's Row. This is actually the first ice level in the game, and it's actually kind of surprising that it's so early in the game, but this game was released pretty late into the SNES's life cycle. It was actually released after the Nintendo 64 came out, so we're guessing it was their way of trying to show off what this game had available as early on as possible. So here we actually warp, and then we're going to play through again, and once we get to the DK coin, then we're going to end up start selecting out of the level. It saves a slight bit of time, about 1 or 2 seconds, compared to doing it normally and then finishing the level. So let's see. It's right here after the halfway. And now we're on to Murky Mill. Murky Mill's little gimmick is that it's dark, and we're going to be transforming into our first animal buddy of the game, which is Ellie the elephant, who actually replaces Rambi the rhino. I'm sorry. And Ellie in this level has this little trait that she's afraid of mice. So we have to make sure to not be seen by the mouse in the light. So there are going to be a couple areas where we have to kill the rats with barrels, and in some cases stomp on them outside of the light. Again, this is one where it's just slightly after halfway, but so it's faster to actually just take the warp barrel and go through, as opposed to actually complete the level entirely. Ooh, that was a bad hit on my part. So we collect that. Didn't seem to register right there. Okay, so now we're on to the first boss. This is Belcha. The little trick here is he spits out these barrels that have bugs in them. So we have to break the barrel, knock out the bug, and then we throw the bug into his mouth, just like so. If you get it in 2 cycles, that's the fastest route. And just like that, that's World 1 complete. So now we're moving on to, I believe it's Crimwood Forest? Yes. So this is one level where we're actually not going to be using the warp barrels. Instead, we're going to play through the level normally. The main reason is because the DK coin is far enough past the halfway that there is a strat to where you can actually take the warp, go back down, collect the coin, and then go back up, but it's extremely difficult, and I am not capable of that strat quite as well as the others are, so we're actually just going to play through the level normally. It only saves I think 2 seconds if you do it the other way, but it's, like I said, it's a lot more difficult because you have to roll down and dodge these monkeys that are throwing their acorns at you. Now, thankfully, for the post-halfway, they actually have these little barrels that are coming up to block you, to block the monkeys for you. And here's our little friend coin. No issues there. Sometimes we have some trouble where it actually bounces back. We just go through these last couple rounds, dodge the acorns, and we're out of the level. So now we're actually coming up to Riverside Race, where normally we're getting chased by a bunch of bees, and we actually have to beat a bear's time in 103%, the full completion category. However, here we're actually doing a bit different. We're taking the warp. Oh. Okay, this is actually a problem. Okay, so what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna take the warp. Haven't had a problem like that in a long time. So we're gonna switch back. Okay. My up input had some issues there. So what we're normally supposed to do is warp, roll through here, and then we water bounce up here, and this is where we have to get coin. Normally we run right back and hit the flagpole, however there was a slight issue with that. But we're fine, we're fine. So now we're on Squeals on Wheels, again, taking the warp, same as usual. The gimmick here is there are a number of rats in the wheels, and in order to open these doors, we have to actually knock out the rats. And once we knock every one of them out, then we can hit, and we can bypass the next closed door. However, we're only going to be opening up to the halfway point, because once we hit past halfway, we actually don't need to hit any more of these rats. And instead, we're actually going to skip them entirely, run past, and there's an area where coin's going to be at that we can run into there. So let's see. We have to make sure we're not hitting, we don't accidentally roll into the red bees, or that we don't accidentally let them hit the barrel. Because if they hit the barrel, then we don't actually get to, we can't actually hit the rat with it. Missed that jump. So this is the last rat we're actually going to hit with the barrels. Because once we roll past here, up this platform and up, we're going to make a small team throw, and coin's going to be conveniently located right up here. Okay. Really, kitty? Okay. So now we're on the springing spiders. There are a number of spiders that are going to be bouncing around, and we have to actually use them as platforms. But of course, we're going to warp first. The DK barrel is actually about right past the halfway point in this level, and this is a fairly long level for the first couple worlds, so that's why we're going to take the warp instead. Now some of these are different with the spiders, like the yellow ones will constantly bounce, but there are some purple spiders here that you're actually going to be seeing soon that will only jump when you land on them. And we're going to turn into squawks for this part of the level, because he's actually faster to fly through as opposed to bouncing around as the Kongs. There's the little purple ones that I mentioned. So we're going to hop out of here. The halfway barrel is coming right up on us, so let's see. There it is. And right here, this is where we have to go for the team throw. We have to team throw in order to reach the coin. Now, let's see if I could get this. I did. Alright. Normally, you're supposed to have to switch to Dixie, throw it up there, switch back to Kitty, and then team throw to get in there. But if you wiggle just a little bit to the right, you can actually get there and throw the barrel as Kitty, and it saves a decent amount of time. So now we're going into Bobbing Barrel Brawl. This is another level with Ellie. There are some strats that include actually skipping the barrel. However, I'm not very good at what we call Ellie skip. So what we're going to do instead is just take the barrel and progress as Ellie. Thankfully, the level isn't too far. The coin isn't too far. It's actually less than halfway. Ooh. And you're also supposed to like hit these birds and the bees to get these barrels available to jump on, but that's a bit slow. Take a deboost boost. Okay. And right here is where we have the coin. So we just take the barrel and boom. And now we're on to Eric. Eric's ambush. This spider has been a big problem for a lot of runners. However, thankfully, if you jump and throw at the right times, you can actually skip his more troublesome cycles. Which I accidentally missed that one. Thankfully, it's not as slow of a cycle compared to his next one. There we go. So, unlike Belcha, which spit out a bonus coin, which in this category doesn't actually matter, Eric actually spit out a patch. Now, we need the patch in order to gain access to the next boat, which, unlike the motorboat here, the hovercraft is our next boat, and it has the ability to cross rocks. This is the game's way of making sure we don't go farther into the game without beating the first couple worlds. Now, the interesting thing about the next two worlds is that you can actually play either one in any order you wish. However, we play through the island world Mechanos first, because Mechanos is actually a harder level. In fact, casually it's considered the fourth world. So we play through it faster, so that way if something goes south, we could always reset faster and waste less time. But it's honestly a fun game, a fun world to play through, and it's got some really good music to go with their levels. My timing was a little bit off on that. So, Fireball Frenzy here, we have to dodge these carbines, which are these owls with the cannons, because they shoot these they shoot these at us. We commonly jokingly call them cheese balls. Thankfully, their patterns are pretty easy to keep track of. Quick and easy little fall right there. The DK coin is actually right near the end of the level, and there's actually a fun little damage boost we're going to take near the end of the level as well. Let's... Okay. So, to the right here is where coin's located. We just have to make sure we time the shot correctly. And here's the D-boost. We jump up, we take the hit, and it allows us to bypass the third wave of carbines entirely, and it saves about 6 seconds over natural route. And we just go through these last 4 carbines, and we're done with the level. Now we're on to Demolition Drain Pipe. This is actually one of 2 auto-scrollers that we have to go through in this world, but thankfully they aren't as tedious, I guess you can say, because there are certain enemies that you have to make sure to dodge, and it's definitely not as action-packed as some of the other levels, but it's still alright. There are some interesting little strats you can do at higher levels. Like, for example, if you're... Ooh, that was close. You can actually gain a little bit of a speed boost jumping down in those little pits. However, if you time it wrong, then you'll take a hit on the edge, and just like that. And depending on which one you take a hit on, if you take a hit on one, you're often likely to take a hit on a second. And I don't think we have another DK barrel here, so I'm gonna have to be very careful. And make sure you jump into the barrel, because if you don't jump into the barrel, then when you hit the edge, you die outright, regardless of how many Kongs you've got. Alright, so now we're moving on to the next auto-scroller, Ripsaw Rage. In this level, it's actually a vertical auto-scroller compared to the other one, where we're being chased by a giant saw through the woods. Normally for this game we only have one Kong to save some frames and make it faster. However, because of where we have to get the DK coin, I prefer having both Kongs on hand throughout the level. In addition, it also can act as a safety net because there's a couple jumps that sometimes you can seem to clip through the branches at the worst possible time, and if you fall and get stuck, then there's no way to get back up. That's one of the jumps right there. Sometimes you can slip right through and land on the saw. And I want to take that for safety. Now, the interesting thing with this category is the fact that it acts almost like a good middle ground category, because the current and most prevalent category for this game is any %, where you actually play through the first 7 worlds on their own, and the average times are about 50 to 55 minutes, depending on where exactly you look. But like the world record, for example, is a 46:30 by SweMind, and then there's a category called 103 where you actually complete this game entirely, bonuses, DK coins, everything, and the world record there is a 152:40. So this category, the world record is a 107, so it acts as a good middle ground because not only do we get to have a shorter category to play, but it has some collections to do, and it also allows us to play through a world that is normally not seen in any %. So here we actually have to jump up, and this is where we collect the barrel for coin. There we go. That's why we actually have to that's why I like to have both Kongs. You actually have to team up there, and up until that point I feel it's a little dangerous. So now we're in Blazing Bazookas. Again, I'm going to have 2 Kongs to start with, however I will be getting rid of Kitty pretty soon. Kitty in general is a bit slower than Dixie, and in this level specifically, having 1 Kong is much faster. It's also a lot more dangerous, but at the same time, sometimes the danger can make it a little more fun. So here is actually where we have our DK coin to collect. As you can see, the bazooka's actually shooting wooden barrels. We actually have to come over here and touch this barrel that'll transform it into steel kegs, and that's how we actually get it. This is what we usually do for 103, and collecting the DK coin, I want to actually stick to that, so that way when I do play 103 again, I'll keep that in mind. We're actually not going to we're actually skipping the DK coin barrel that was right there, and instead we're going to pick up the one right here. And we're just gonna... There we go. Normally we sack Kitty off right there to go to the left for a bonus. Here I'm just gonna sack Kitty off to make things easier for me here. There is a trick where you can actually roll down that platform right there, and it's faster. However, there is a risk that you can catch... The game thinks you're collecting an invisible banana, and it can actually catch you up and you get hit by the TNT barrel and die. So the next level here is Low-G Labyrinth. The gimmick to this level is basically we're in the sewer, and this green gas that's in here makes things go slower. Basically, it makes our movements about half, and consequently, any actions that we make that cause a problem, the mistakes we make essentially double the time loss. So we have to be very careful. So, just dodging the pathways of the red bees. Just for safety, we're going to take the halfway barrel. And now we're actually collecting Quawks, who is more or less like Squawks' little brother, I guess you can say. He's different in that he can't actually shoot eggs out of his mouth like Squawks can. However, as you just saw, he can actually pick up barrels with his talons. And we use that throughout the level to help save time. I kind of messed that up. There's actually a trick here called Vine Clip that, in reference to DKC2. Let's see if I can get it. Nope. Okay. Well, I almost had it. Basically, you can actually go between the two red bees there, and if you get it correctly, you can actually slip through them without taking any damage, but it's a lot harder to pull off if you don't get it set up exactly right on the start. So now we're gonna go over here, and this is actually where we have coin. Conveniently, I actually have the right Kong in the lead right now too, which is nice. Now, if you've seen any percent runs in this game, you would probably notice that I'm actually playing the U version, the North American version, compared to the Japanese version. And in any percent, Japanese version is actually faster because of a trick that I'll briefly mention, but you'll learn a lot more of in later runs. However, in this category, I don't do it, mainly because there is a level, a later level that using U version makes a lot easier. So I'm going to stick to this. Consequently, that means I can show off a little trick in this level, in this boss, that's not really available in J. So this is Chaos. Let's see if I can get it. I could have had it. Okay, that's not too bad. So what you just saw is it's a glitch or exploit, whatever you want to call it, called infinite team throwing. It only works in U. You can bounce and infinitely team throw like this, and if you catch it on the right frame, then you can actually keep floating. In J, it doesn't work because once you bounce off of something, it kills your throw. So what happened here was, by jumping on Chaos multiple times like that, I'm able to skip his cycles. Normally it takes 6 hits in order to knock out Chaos, and normally each one requires their own really slow strat. However, I just did a 2-cycle here, which saved... Optimal Chaos is a 1-cycle, and it can save about roughly about a minute over natural route. I did 2-cycle, and it's actually the fastest version of 2-cycle, so it's actually probably about, I'd say about 45 to 50 seconds faster than how you normally would play it. So it actually helps save a fair amount of time in general. It saves a lot of time in general. However, in the Japanese version, there's a trick that saves a little bit more time, which is why in any percent it's actually faster to run J. That said, here it's easier for me to... I play on U mainly because I'm used to it more, and because of the fact that I feel more comfortable trying this trick right now, as well as dealing with the later level. However, there is a trick in World 5, only for the J version, that you'll hear about in future runs. So, be ready for that, because it's going to be a treat, especially if the runners that I know of are able to get it on their first attempt. It's really neat. So this is Boz's Blockade. It's more or less a water level. It's a water level. It's pretty much the standard. Nothing too fancy about it. And conveniently for these water levels, they put coin right at the end, so you don't actually have to go search for them. So now we're on to Rocket Barrel Ride. Here we actually have to go and jump through a bunch of these barrels that will shoot us high up in the air, and it'll help guide us throughout the level. Now, we're going to be making use of, I believe it's 2 damage boosts during this level. Each one can help save some time by skipping a cycle, like right here. we're gonna fly over this bee, take this hit, and it's gonna let us to jump up here, as opposed to having to wait the 3 cycles of the bee in order to get around. I'm gonna take a slow go there. To the left there is a bonus, which we don't have to worry about right now, thankfully. So we're about to come up on the next damage boost, and this is actually another variance between U and J. Well, right here it's fine, but you're about to see the difference. Because in the J version of the game, there is a specific area where you actually have to take a hit with Kitty, whereas here we actually don't take the hit, so I'm going to be dumping Kitty off in a different location. I'm going to be taking a hit right here, because in the Japanese version, right here, the bee rolls down instead of up when we get there, so we have to take the hit there. But here, we just get rid of Kitty because we don't need him, and it's faster. So we collect the coin right there. Alright. And we move on to Creeping Clasps. This is one of my personal favorite levels just because of how fast it is, fast-paced. Again, the coin is actually at the very end of the level, thankfully. So the goal here is we have to jump across and avoid these clasps, which are these red barrels. They're TNT barrels, so if we touch them, it explodes. Ooh. And right now, since I only have 1 Kong, it's a very dangerous thing, because if I get hit, then I'm dead. So now the thing is, in 103 I do take another Kong I do take Kitty for safety. However, this level can create up to 5 seconds of lag by having both Kongs. So by keeping it to 1 Kong and taking the risk, I'm able to save a good amount of time from it. As you saw, we saw coin. We have to actually go past the flag here. And we collected him, no problem. So now we're on to Tracker Barrel Trek. Let's see. Actually, going to skip Kitty again because, again, right now we don't need him. The first half here is pretty fun, pretty normal. These barrels are different in that they actually follow you as you go. So unless you make a horrible mistake near the edge, it's almost impossible for you to miss and fall out. Now, once again, we have to take Ellie because at the end of the stage, there's actually a sign for to get out of Ellie, and if we take Ellie to that sign, we get the steel keg that we need in order to get the barrel. We get the steel keg we need in order to get the coin. Okay, I missed my shot, so we're gonna have to do this a little slower. There we go. Now, this is the only area in the game where this is useful. This is a technique called R canceling. By tapping R while you're shooting out of the barrel, you actually cancel the height of the blast. So it helps us avoid taking a hit from those bees. So we're gonna jump up here, kill these 2 guys, and there's our keg. Now, this is different in that we have to make sure we don't mess this up, because if we mess this up, we have to take a death and start from the halfway barrel. Thankfully, we didn't make a mistake, so we don't have to worry about that. And now we're on to Fish Food Frenzy. In this level, we have ourselves a fish named Nibbla. He's actually been around us for a couple levels now. If you had noticed, he was in the water in Bobbing Barrel. He was actually in the water in Creeping Clasps as well. So the gimmick here is we actually have to feed him these cocoa fish, which are these little green and red fish. And we have to make him avoid the lurchins, which you can see right there, because if he eats the cocoa fish, he maintains a color similar to blue or purple. If he eats the lurchin, he turns a color down, and there are 4 colors for him. There's blue, purple, pink, and red. If he turns dark red, then he will actually eat one of the Kongs, and in some cases he will actually outright skip a fish that he would normally go to. So we're gonna be a little careful and let him eat these fish, because we don't want to take any hits if we can avoid it. This is one of those oh boy. Okay, that's not too bad, because there's actually a DK barrel right down here, and in addition to that, there's also one at the very end of the level anyway. But all this really did is just save me the hassle of having to skip Kong swap at the end. Now, once we get down to this part, as long as we start with him purple, then we can actually just breeze right through here, no problem. So, we have the team throw up here, and this is where coin's located. I'm definitely willing to bet that probably messed with a couple people here and there when they were first playing it, when they were first playing this game, trying to figure it out. So now we're on to the next boss, which is Squirt Showdown. This is actually a pretty basic boss to deal with. He does have 3 cycles to deal with. The first cycle, he will shoot his water like this once. The second time, he will shoot it around twice. And then the third time, he will actually shoot it around twice, but at a faster speed. The goal is, at the end of each of the cycles, to hit his 2 eyes, each twice, go through the 3 cycles, and you're done. Now, the thing to notice is that we actually received a ski at the end of Chaos, and we're going to receive a ski here. This is part of the other reason why you can do either world in any order you choose. Because once you collect both skis, then you can actually retrieve the next boat. Oh, how did that miss? Okay, so unfortunately we missed the last shot with the eye, so we're gonna actually have to go through this once again. Thankfully, it's not as bad. A missed third cycle can actually cost you about 10 to 15 seconds. Thankfully, it's not quite as bad as some other tricks. The interesting thing about Squirt Showdown, too, is the fact that, 1, it's actually the only boss in the game where you aren't giving a Kong barrel, so you can theoretically enter and exit as one Kong. And 2, you can't actually take damage in this boss. The only thing that can happen is you either miss your jump, or if you touch the water, it can push you down and actually make you fall off the waterfall. So as you see, the 2 skis got us the turbo ski. This lets us actually climb up the waterfalls, which makes things a lot easier, and it lets us hit the next part of the worlds. So here we're entering K3, which is World 5. This is actually a world that any percent runners tend to really get nervous for, because the difficult trick I mentioned is actually at the end of this world. But for right now, it's just a pretty simple level right here. You just climb the ropes, and we actually take a pit stop right here after the O. This is where we have the coin. Now, normally you're supposed to throw the barrel up here and let it roll back and outspeed it. However, the way Kitty holds the barrels, he can actually just jump right up from under the cliff and hit him from below, which saves a lot of time. So, let's see. Also, I think I was supposed to take a hit. Okay, that works. Not exactly where I wanted to lose Kitty at, but it's alright. Now, part of the thing is, we actually need a Dixie in the front here, mainly because we're gonna take the barrel here, and then we're gonna take a damage boost up here, which lets us skip this, which is about, I think it's about 2 or 3 seconds saved. And then we roll down here, and we're done. And now we're on to Tearaway Toboggan. This is another auto-scroller similar to Demolition Drainpipe. The only difference is now we're in the snow worlds, so we're going to be snow sledding instead. We also have to make sure we don't hit certain enemies. For example, there is a knick-knack coming up. It's the little red flying insect that if you hit it, this right here, then you have a 3-frame window to jump. Otherwise, you will go careening straight into that pit that's immediately after it. Thankfully, we managed to avoid it. And once again, as with most auto-scrollers, it seems, the coin is pretty much right at the end of the level, so we don't have to worry about that right now. There we go. So we go right here, and we have to go past the flagpole once again, and coin is stationed right back here. So we just collect the coin, and we're done with the level. Alright. Now, for this one, we actually have to... for this part, we actually have to switch to Dixie because of where the DK coin's located. And this is one of the most annoying tricks for getting the DK coin. This isn't even a speedrunner's trick. This is more you have to do this. You have to jump up here and bounce the barrel off of the ledge like that in order to get the coin. It is incredibly annoying. Ooh, forgot I was supposed to switch. Alright. So the interesting thing with this level is there are actually a few areas where we can actually team throw and skip parts of the level, like so. There's actually a part of this level coming up that is a very difficult trick, but if you get it, then it saves a good 15-20 seconds over natural route. And it's actually coming up right here. Okay, I missed the first attempt. And that was a bad attempt to get back on there. There we go. Can we get that? Yes, we can. Okay. That still saved a decent amount of time in comparison, thankfully. That trick is very difficult, but if done correctly, it can save 15-20 seconds over the natural route, which I haven't done that trick in it. I haven't gone the natural route in a very long time. So here we're in. This is Crack Shot Croc. Some people in the Donkey community like to refer to this as DKC3's version of Web Woods, because you actually have to play as Squitter. And there are a bunch of areas that you have to navigate and jump over. The difference, though, is that this is actually easier than Web Woods, mainly because of the fact that there's solid ground for the most part. So if you fall, you're alright. You can be alright. But there are a number of these vats that if you land in, you'll take damage. Also, my fingers are... I've been having a bit of weakness in my right arm all day, and it looks like it's actually affecting my web shooting, which might be a bit problematic. So there are a couple areas where you can actually take damage boosts in this level, and it can be a bit faster. However, I'm not very adept at most of them. This one, however, I do take because it helps set the Kong order relatively correct. I just have to make sure I don't make a foolish error this time around. So for safety's sake, I'm gonna be taking this last part fairly slowly. I just want to make sure I get this right. Because if I die here, it costs a lot of time. And I should have Dixie in the lead. And as it was with Tracker Barrel, here you actually get the coin at the end of the level. You get the coin at the end of the level, but you have to have the animal buddy in order to collect the coin. Thankfully, in this level, you don't get a choice on that, as opposed to Tracker Barrel, where you can choose to avoid it. So this is Lemon Lunch. This is another one where we're going to try to keep Kitty in the barrel for as long as possible, because it can save a lot of time in lag. Like, in this version, in any percent strats like this, it's more or less about, probably about 2 or 3 seconds worth of savings, but it saves a lot more in 103, because you actually have to go through a bonus that deals with these penguins, and it can actually slow the game to about 15 frames per second. And this is normally 60 frames per second, so it can cut it down to about a quarter. Okay, I couldn't avoid that barrel, but no big deal. Now, we do usually collect Kitty at the very end of the level, because there's one last jump that can be very dangerous to deal with. We collect it right here, because a lot of times the Lenguins have some of the worst hitboxes in the game. I actually had to stop for a second to make sure I remembered that I got the coin. So this is where things change. This is Bleak. This is the big boss of World 5, and I missed my shot. There's actually a trick in the Japanese version where if you take damage and lose, but you pause on a specific frame, and there is an audio cue to help you with that, then you can actually skip the fight, and it treats it for some reason it treats it as though you actually beat Bleak. You don't get the coin, but it treats it as though you beat Bleak, and it lets you skip the level. It doesn't work in U because you can't actually pause after you die. In J you can, and if done optimally, Bleak fight in U is about 1 minute and 15. If you get first try Bleak skip, then it's about a 14 to 15 second game, and each attempt is about the same amount. So you can actually, theoretically, if you attempt Bleak skip 4 or 5 times, I don't remember exactly which, and get it by that point, you can either save time or break even. So because of that, any percent is actually faster on the J version. However, in this version, because of a world we're going to be dealing with that you don't deal with in any percent, it's actually faster to play on U. So we had a good Bleak fight, and now we're entering 6-1, Buzzer Barrage, or as I like to call it, the level in which the playtesters were drunk, because the goal, you're supposed to knock out these bees with some of these barrels in order to get through some of these, you're supposed to go down some of these passageways by knocking out the bee with a barrel. However, as you're about to see, oh, accidentally grabbed him. You can actually go and slide right through, no problem. And there are quite a few of these areas as well. Unfortunately, this one, from what I'm understanding, there is a way to do it, but it's extremely difficult. And with only one Kong, it is right before the halfway. It is not worth, in my eyes, like in my opinion, it honestly isn't worth the hassle. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so right here, we're gonna slip to the right, slip back down with the barrel, and we're gonna make this faster. You're supposed to collect the barrel, and then you're actually supposed to shoot, kill the 2 bees and try again, and then you go down. Oh god. Yeah, I kind of saw that coming. Okay, so first death of the run, not too bad. So we're gonna slip back down here. Thankfully, we don't have to recollect the coin. Once it's collected, that's it. So now we're just gonna zoom back down here. And since I actually have a spare hit, I can afford to do that. You're actually not supposed to... Oof. And my arm... Oof, the weakness in my arm is actually starting to kick in now. Didn't expect that. You can actually go up above there without taking a hit, normally. I'm just having some poor luck with my arm is all. There is a spot coming up that you're supposed to take damage with afterwards. There we go. So like right here, another one you could slip right on by, no problem. Take a D-boost here, and once again, slip right on by, no problems at all. We do have to wait for this one to come about, but... And here we have another one. This one's actually a little more difficult because it's actually a much tighter squeeze, but it's not too bad once you get used to it. You take a hit here. Take a hit here. I don't recall whether this is right or not, but, come on. Come on. There we go. We can slip right on. Okay, I'm glad I didn't take a hit then. Okay. So we had a couple faults, but nothing too heartbreaking. That right there is a little trick called Benny Skip. If you hit B and tap left right after you use the ride, you can actually skip the very last text box. It doesn't really save any time, but it's a cool little thing to do. So this is Confused Cliffs. As you can see, this is another vertical auto-scroller. We have a rope that's climbing up, burning. We're climbing a rope that's burning at one end, and they have a bunch of enemies that are in the path that we have to keep dodging. Confused Cliffs is often called by the community Burn Your Rope Update because this is about a 2.5 to 3 minute long level. And so what runners often do is they take the time here to look at the past run, look back at the run they've had and see what went right, what went wrong, and whatnot. Here though, I just hope everyone that's been watching has been enjoying the runs they've been seeing, and I hope you guys all continue to enjoy your runs over the next 10 days because there's going to be a lot to watch and a lot to enjoy. So, skip right here. Over there, they have a silver bear coin. It's not necessary to collect outside of 103, so we're not going to bother with it. There is one right here. This is mainly because of, again, force of habit, so I tend to stick to it. There is one coming up that we can where you collect 2 coins, which, again, aren't necessary in this category. However, in 103, I do it because of the fact that it lets me collect the coins in the R old route, and it lets me skip that B, which I have had times where I have gotten hit by it, even though I know full well it's there. So, and not only that, the little barrels can act as a little bit of a side thing and have some fun with it, because, once again, this is a long auto-scroller, and there isn't really a whole lot you can do, because if you jump and miss, like, if you fall off and don't land in a barrel or whatnot, then you're gonna die. And this is one this is one level you do not want to die in. Even from the halfway on, it's still about a minute and a half lost if you die, So we're going to be dealing with these little copters here. Thankfully, we're actually near the end. So we just have to dodge this last little copter, and then right up at the top is Coin. He's actually hidden inside this cliff, so what we have to do is jump up here, grab the barrel, and fling it. And because he always faces us with his shield, he's actually facing straight up. And because of that, it let the barrel hit him, no problem. So now we're entering Floodlit Fish. I'm just going to give an apology now. This level is going to be very dark, because optimally you don't hit these Gleaming Breams at all. You play as On Guard, our swordfish friend. You know what? Why not? Let me hit one, just so you guys can see the kind of things we're dealing with here. There's a bunch of passageways here we have to go through, along with a bunch of lurchins. So the problem is it's actually slow to hit the Gleaming Breams. So most runners, when playing on our CRTs, will actually brighten our screens. And then, unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot that usually can be done in terms of the video. So if it's too dark for you guys to see, I'm very sorry. There's just optimally, there isn't really much I can do about it. I just hit... Oof, come on. I just hit the first one to give an example of what you're supposed to do in this level in casual playthrough. Now, these Lurchins, they have a special pattern that you're supposed to be able to hit, that you can actually hit by releasing and charging at certain frames. In 103, it's... Okay, that was actually really nice. In 103, it's a little bit harder, too, because you actually have to do it a 4th time in order to get into the bonus. And right here, this is what makes it very difficult, because here, if you take a bad hit, you have to go through all of that as one Kong, and it is not easy. So, as is with the rest of the water levels, coin is conveniently located at the very end. Collect him, and we're done with the level. So, now we're entering Pothole Panic. There is a trick where you can actually skip the squawks here. However, I'm not very capable of it at the moment. I've been trying to pick it up, but it is not very easy. It saves a decent amount of time. However, if you fail it, you tend to have to either fall down and collect it again, or you end up losing Dixie, so you have to go and collect squawks anyway, and have to collect the DK barrel in the process. So it's definitely one of those where it's high risk, high reward. So this one is basically Animal Antics, the movie, the game, because here we're going to be going through, you're supposed to be going through Squawks, On Guard, Ellie the Elephant, and then, what's the other one? Squitter. However, we're going to skip Ellie, and we're going to skip Squitter, because these two aren't necessary for us. Okay, I couldn't get the water bounce correct right there. That's fine. So, there's Squitter. We're gonna say goodbye. Run past here. And right up here, we're gonna do our team throws to reach coin. Next up, we have Ropey Rumpus. This one is actually a really fun level for me because it's rope climbing. Right at the start, there is a 2-1 jump technique you can actually pull off. However, it's a frame-perfect trick. It's very difficult. I am not capable of it myself. However, you're probably going to see it again during the any % runs coming up later in the week. You're probably going to be seeing at least people attempting it, but it's definitely really cool. Instead, we're going to do the team throw, the damage boost strat here, which still saves a decent amount of time over natural route. And then right down here is actually where we have to collect the coin. Again, it's one where it's not too hard to get once you figure it out, but good luck for the casual players who don't know to fall down there to begin with. Like I said before, sometimes the game can be a bit cruel in that regard, and forgiving in others. So we're just gonna slide on by right here. Alright. And now we're on to Barbos's Barrier. This... Personally, I do not like this boss at all. But... unfortunately, there isn't really anything you can do to skip him or anything. Or, sorry, her. So we just have to deal with it. Ooh, that was a... Okay, that was actually some decent RNG. I just had a bad aim the first time around. So what you have to do is, using these different creatures, whether it's the Lurchins or these homing shell creatures, you actually have to knock out these pink little things. They're Barbos's shields. You have to knock them out, and then you can access her to hit. That's gonna be... Oh. I didn't think that was actually gonna be low enough to hit. Alright, that works. Okay. So this last part, she shoots out these spikes at us. Thankfully, if you hide up here, near where she's at, you actually don't have to worry about them at all, which is nice. And just like that, we're out of Barbos. So we actually have 2 worlds left to play through. So we're entering into Chaos Core, which is World 7. The first level is Conveyor Rope Clash. As the title implies, there are going to be ropes here, like these, that actually act as conveyor belts, in a way. Some of them go forward, some of them go backwards, and we have to make sure we use them properly in order to go through the level. Slip down there to avoid one. Some of the difficulty here too is actually avoiding the bonuses, like that little scroll, that little roll down, the roll jump I did a minute ago. That one actually leads directly to a bonus that you have to actively avoid. There's one coming up in a few seconds too that we have to dodge right here. And I mistimed. Okay, so I mistimed that. There's a speed strat you can do right there. Unfortunately, I mistimed my movement, so I couldn't get it. Okay, so we're gonna jump down here. This is where Coin's at for the level. In practice, I actually forgot about him, so I want to make sure, absolutely sure that I remembered him this time. Okay, so the next level here is Creepy Caverns. This one is often referred to as RNG Caverns or Crappy Caverns, depending on who you ask. And the reason is because of these white barrels. These things are more or less RNG. There are some patterns that are fast, and then there are patterns that are ridiculously slow and take a while. And hopefully we could get good patterns here. Okay. Well, the fact that that took 3 kind of implies this isn't... Oh. That was bad. That was a bad move on my part. And yeah, this... Evidently we're gonna have some pretty bad RNG, at least for the start. Okay, that makes up for it a little bit. Because that one likes to be a pain. So we're gonna jump up here to take that. Switch to Dixie. I was not gonna blindly jump into that one, because I did not want to risk that again. Okay, so here we have to deal with 3 of these creatures. They're called Nakas. Basically, they're kind of like the class, except they don't blow up if you hit them. They just, all you do is bounce off of them. So thankfully, we don't have to deal with them too much. Now here's where we get the DK barrel, DK coin, and it is a ridiculous strat. You have to throw the barrel, jump up, and then jump, and then you have to actually jump up again in time in order for it to count. Ooh, and okay, that was actually some decent RNG for that shot. Those actually shoot really quickly, and if you don't know, like if you don't recognize it fast enough, it actually can be a real pain to try to navigate, and more often than not, you'll end up sitting there having to pause a few times in order to figure out where it is and where it's aiming in order to be able to time it and jump correctly. Okay, so now we're on to Lightning Lookout. This level is one... Oof, and, okay, I'm gonna keep moving. This level is pretty much one of the most hated levels in the entire game for anyone. And the reason is because the lightning here, it has a pattern. Basically what it does is it takes 2 or 3 shots to figure out where it's going, and then on the... Oh god. Okay. And then it's like every 3rd shot, I believe, it predicts where you're actually going to be. So, okay, so this is what we had to do. We had to hit the first bird to get the wind barrel. We use the wind barrel to kill the second bird to get the iron barrel. And then we have to use the iron barrel in order to get the coin. It is a very complex and crazy thing. And when you're only Kitty, it is a very, very terrifying moment. Oh gosh. Yeah, this right here is exactly why this level is hated so much. Like, the lightning is pattern-based, but it sometimes can feel like it's RNG, and it is a very, very terrifying level to deal with. Side note for the water, if you take the water, if you're in the water and the lightning hits it, regardless of where it hits it, you will actually take a hit regardless. Like, basically the water conducts electricity. So if you're in the water and it gets hit, and you're not standing on a barrel like that, then congratulations, you're getting hit. And because Kitty had to grab that barrel, I ended up losing him. Thankfully for these, you can actually shoot under, oh god, bad patterns, okay. What was that? I'm actually really confused now because I don't know what that sound was. That wasn't even one of my alerts either, so I don't even know what was causing that. Okay, so this is Coin Dozer Clamber. Basically, these are we don't necessarily know why exactly they're a thing. However, it's assumed by a couple of us that these might be like the corpses of coins, and they push, like, if you land near them, they will actually push forward and try to knock you into the pits. And in this kind of level, having Dixie is very nice because of the fact that if you have it, like if you have Dixie and then you're able to hover, and it makes things a little easier. So here, again, we have to change the barrels to steel. Thankfully, it's not that difficult to pull off. This last part, though, can be a bit tricky, so we're going to be very careful. Okay, so now we're on to Poisonous Pipeline. If any of you are familiar with DKC2, then you can remember at the end of K. Rool 1, one of his cycles, he shoots these purple clouds, and if you hit them, then your controls are reversed. The same applies while you're in this purple water. The only difference is that your up is still up and your down is still down. That is pretty much the only difference that I'm aware of. Not only that, so we have to use left and right, and it's slightly difficult to pull off. And on top of that, it's also got a lot more enemies than a typical water level does. So you have to be very careful with your movements. Just like that. That was very, very dangerous, admittedly. So we're gonna shoot. Okay. And I couldn't go down fast enough. Okay. Thankfully, we still weren't too far from the halfway, and in this level, I always make sure to grab it, just in case. So we're gonna we're gonna hop out the halfway, switch Kongs, because Dixie is a much easier swimmer in this level, and her smaller hitbox helps make things a lot easier to deal with. There we go. Okay, there is actually a way to get on guard for both a standard run and for for 103 attempts as well. However, I'm not very good at getting it normally, so I instead just go at it with the Kongs, which is a bit harder to pull off, admittedly. That being said, it does save me the time of trying to get it as well as not reaching it. So we're just gonna... Oh, didn't actually take a hit. So we're gonna switch to Kitty here. And this is where we end up getting it. Now, we're actually gonna switch back to Dixie, mainly because, unlike any percent, we actually don't fight K. Rool here. So we're actually going to run all the way back, instead of fighting the boss in this world, because fighting this boss and beating him gets you to the credits. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to hop out of here, and we're going to actually go around these rocks. And this actually unlocks the hidden world. Okay, we actually had really good movement for that today, too. And as a side note, another reason we don't fight the boss, in addition to it being the credits, is also the fact that it doesn't actually provide us with a DK coin. It only provides us with a bonus coin. So, because of that, there's no need for us to actually fight him. That said, there is another boss here. There's a boss in this world, and it is the big boss from the other world. Just a different fight itself. This one, we do have to fight him, because he does give us the DK coin. Oh, excuse me. In fact, the way the route goes, that is actually the final coin. Now, as you see, we traded in the bonus coins in order to blow up these rocks. Normally in 103, you're only able to blow up 4 once you complete all the other bonuses, and you have to collect the rest of the coins here. We don't have to do that, so we're able to blow up all 5 of the rocks, which means we don't actually have to go back to Boomers for the last one, which actually saves a decent amount of time. So, here, it's technically an auto-scroller because you can't actually control your speed. However, it's different because Ellie, seeing the mice, is going into a full sprint, and you have to watch what you're doing in order to not fall into the pits. In 103, it's much more difficult because you actually have to take Parry the Parallel Bird with you for a bonus. Crap. Thankfully, we don't have to do that here, which makes this a lot easier. Now, I did take a deboost on purpose in order... the plan was to set my Kongs in a specific manner. Unfortunately, I took another deboost. I took another bit of damage, so I can't do that. So I actually have to swap. But, once again, being Ellie gives us the coin, gives us the barrel, which lets us become the coin. Or, get the coin. Now, this is the level that actually makes me use U instead of J for the game, for this category. This is Crisscross Cliffs. Ordinarily, the plan is you're supposed to jump on these barrels, hit these switches to blow up these bees. However, there is a team throw strat here where you can actually team throw and bypass these. So let's see if I can do this. 1. There we go. 2. That one's a bit finicky sometimes because you have to get a good enough height to be able to throw. There are 4 of these throws in total, and I believe it saves something like 15 to 20 seconds overall compared to doing it normal. Unfortunately, we can't jump past this one, so we actually have to climb up here. But it does get us set up not only for the 3rd throw, but it also sets us up to where we get our coin, where we get DK coin. And you have to be careful. If you go a little bit too far to the left on these, you'll actually slip off. Okay. Okay, unfortunately I wasn't able to actually time that one correctly, so we're gonna have to go up through here. It's gonna lose a little bit of time, but not too bad. But this is where we have coin. So we're gonna jump up here. So let's see how we fare with this last one. The last one is definitely the hardest of the 4, because it is actually a much thinner gap to work with, and you actually have to push left right at the perfect time in order to avoid getting hit. Okay. There we go. It's a bit difficult, but when you're able to do it optimally, it's really cool to see. So now we're on to Tyrant Twin Tussle. Here we're going to be dealing with these creatures called Cuff and Clout. They are very annoying. However, thankfully, we're going to be getting an animal buddy by the name, our animal buddy Squitter, who can shoot webs and actually kill them, which is nice. And the other interesting thing, too, is, like, if you kill one and then you go off screen, the other one will actually despawn. That being said, I prefer killing both of them as soon as possible, so that way I don't have to take any risks. Because if you don't go off screen with it, then it will actually just start charging you. So we had to bounce up there in order to collect the coin and set up a little platform for him. For the bazooka's barrel to actually bounce and roll off for it. It's a bit of a technical technique, but it's actually really fun to figure out. And it's honestly not that hard. So let's see. I was gonna try because I didn't take a bad hit earlier, I'm not gonna try for the modified SGDQ jump, But there's a technique where you can actually slip in between the Cuffing Cloud and the red bee. And in 103, it helps save a lot of time because it lets you get to the last bonus with 2 Kongs. And it saves a lot of time because it's a grabbing bananas bonus. And you can actually collect it with both Kongs as opposed to having to run around with one. So this is Swoopy Salvo. This is a level that on the surface doesn't look that bad, but it's actually pretty difficult. As you saw, we have a number of these swoopies, which are these woodpeckers that are swooping in and trying to get you. You have to be very careful and time your flaps in order to avoid getting hit by them. Thankfully, their patterns are pretty easy to memorize. The big problem comes up right here, though. You have to hit this one, avoid these bees, and get back up here before that one shows up. And this is how you get access to the DK coin, which, again, you only get one shot, so you have to make sure you don't mess it up. So now we're at halfway, and thankfully the rest of this level isn't really all that bad. We're going to switch to Kitty here because these swoopies actually don't hurt you. They actually act as a platform, but you can, in some cases you can actually team throw to skip some of them and make it a bit faster for yourself. That one you can actually skip the 2 that are being shown up. Here, there's actually another skip. There are 5 of these in total that come down, but once you get to the 3rd one, you can actually team throw into the tree hole and save yourself some time. So, last jump. Oh, crap. Okay. So, this... Oh. Bad timing. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to explain something real quick about this. We actually can't go into the next level right now. We have to go back, collect Kitty, and switch. The reason is that there is actually, and I'll try to show this off if we have time, but if you actually come in here, collect the DK barrel up there while you're Dixie, and then switch, it actually creates the situation in which you end up with a wrong warp. Now, for those of you who know DKC2, you're probably thinking, oh, it's a wrong warp, that's kind of cool. The problem with that, though, is DKC3's wrong warp does not do any good. In fact, all it does, which again, if we have time, I'll try to show it. What it does is, it actually will send you into a very modified version of 1-2, doorstop dash. There is a single platform you can hold on to, but there are no doors, no platforms, nothing, and there is no way out of it. And in fact, the only thing is, because we actually collected the water code here, we would be able to start select out of it. Well, actually, we wouldn't be able to start select out of it in this case because of the fact that at the time it still treats it as though we're in Rocket Rush, and since we haven't beaten the level yet, we can't actually start select out of it. Now, with us beating this level now, then if the wrong warp happens, we can start select out of it, as far as I'm aware. So again, easy collecting. And now we just run down to Boomer's bomb shelter. Each of the levels in this world, when we beat it, we collected a cog at the end of the level. By putting these 5 cogs on the machine that's sitting next to us here, then it actually will essentially activate the volcano that we're in, and it'll actually pull up the submarine called the Nautilus. And this is where we actually fight K. Rool, who's the final boss. So this is actually this is our final fight. So K. Rool actually looks pretty different. Here in this game, he's actually set to be that of he goes by the name Baron K. Roolenstein, a play on Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein. So here we've got these fireballs that are shooting up, and we have lightning at the top that we have to avoid. after the first hit, he actually comes back in here, and we have to hit his backpack with these barrels. That's 3. And after the second hit, right like that, he'll actually pop back in. So basically it just boils down to we sit here, we wait for the pattern to finish, and then we have to throw it, and it has to land on his machine. It can't, if it bounces on his head, it doesn't count. Like so. The next 2 hits aren't going to be that bad. The final 4 after that, though, are going to be a bit more difficult to deal with. You'll see why in a second. So as you see, the platform I'm standing on is now starting to move a little bit, which kind of makes it a bit harder to actually aim properly. There we go. Okay, so for the final 4, on U-version, this is set. On Japanese, it's random. Here, for the first one, lightning will come up on the side and hit. You have to put the barrel in the way to where it hits it. Now, after that, it's random, but if you look up top above K. Rool, there's a moving needle. If you look, then it will stop on one side. Like in this case, it stops on the right side. That lets us know which side the lightning's coming from. Okay, so we have one last hit to deal with, and then time's going to be coming up. So, oh, okay, that was a... Okay, I missed my shot, so we're going to have to wait. Okay. Yeah, this last... Again, the last 4 hits are pretty difficult. Specifically, the last 2 are hard, not only because of the movement, but also because of the platform. Alright, so time's coming up, and time. Okay. And that's Donkey Kong Country 3, all DK coins, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the run. Let's see. I need to find out what exactly... Let's see. Okay, so so I've been given the green light. We have a couple minutes to work with. So there are 2 glitches that I want to show off. Essentially, the interesting thing is both of them are actually soft locks. So let's bring it up. The first one is actually in the first boss, Belcha. Now, the interesting thing with Belcha is there's actually 2 variants of this glitch. It's called the Belcha teeth glitch because if you get it, then well, okay, we'll see if we can get it. Shouldn't be that bad. So what we have to do is we actually have to get him to spit out a barrel. We have to get the barrel, get the bug, and then put the bug in his mouth on the same frame that he lands. Okay, that did not work. It's a frame-perfect glitch, however, it's not as hard. It's honestly not a very hard trick to pull off, it's just, it's difficult sometimes. Okay, this actually gives a little time to work with. There we go! So this is the Belcha teeth glitch, and in fact, this is the version that most of our runners know about. Here, the teeth basically will go straight to the left, and they don't come back. You cannot bounce into Belcha, you can't bounce into his mouth, he doesn't spit any more bugs, and there is no way to beat him at this point. I've already beaten him, so I can start select out, but normally your only option would be to go to the far left here and suicide. In normal situations, it's a run killer. In no resets, it's usually about a... Depending on how long it happens, it's about a 15-30 second loss. There's actually a variant of the teeth glitch as well, where the teeth will actually pop out normally, and they will actually continue to spit out bugs, and you can actually defeat the boss in that regard, because all you have to do is collect the bug, and then run back to the barrel part, throw it in there, and it basically acts as normal. It just means you have to go farther out. Okay, so let's see if we could get this. So in order to show this off, first we have to lose Kitty. And this is going to be the last glitch I want to show. So, in order to get this, we have to start with Dixie, collect Kitty, Kong swap before we jump into the barrel, and now we have to actually make it to the end like we did earlier to collect coin, to get to coin. The difference being I can't afford to die on this one, so I'm gonna be a little bit more careful. And in fact, it's gonna actually look a bit different because of the fact that we've already unlocked, we've essentially activated Krematoa already. So it's gonna look a little different than normal. Okay, so we got the halfway. That's not affecting it. So let's just make sure we don't bonk. We can afford one bonk normally, and then depending on where it is, you can potentially afford to get bonked twice. But in most cases, if you bonk twice, then you die, because you don't have enough fuel to actually make it to the top. So, we make it to the top, and I believe we're good now. Oh, I actually thought that was going to be no hits. So, it should trigger it once we're in the air. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the wrong warp of DKC3. As you can see, it is a very, very modified version of 1.2. Because it actually looks this way because we've already activated Krematoa. If we didn't, all of this would look normal. Like, essentially, it would look kind of like how it did in 1.2. There is this one lever that we can grab, but it has no effect. The other levers aren't here. No doors, no enemies, nothing. And we can actually jump up here. This is normally where the warp barrel is, but there's no warp barrel. And if you look, if we keep going this way, this is where you would normally have to climb the rope, and up here. Up here is where you would go for the bonus, but there's nothing here. Some of the others have even done 2-1 jumps to see if there's anything. There is nothing. You cannot actually grab this rope, nor can you team throw high enough, even with a 2-1 jump, to get up there. So, yeah, you are straight up stuck in this regard. However, let's see. Because I activated the water code, I should be able to start and select out of it. So because I beat the level, and because of the fact that I had already... Because, specifically, if you beat the level, and then you wrong warp, you can't warp. Under normal circumstances, you can't start select out of it. It still treats it as its own level, but not its own level. So it makes it to where you can't actually get out of it. But for whatever reason, because we use the water code for this, somehow the water code itself is what triggers it to where we can actually start select out of the wrong warp. It is a very weird situation. I do not understand it. None of us really understand why it does it, but it's honestly kind of interesting because of the fact that the Donkey Kong series is known for their wrong warps, especially 2. So to see one, albeit a more or less useless one in 3, is kind of neat. But with that being said, I believe that's the end for this run. So, let's see who's... So with that, we're gonna take it on up to the next one in the line. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.